Why is the price of my steak so high?
Well, remember this: if you have high input costs and more regulations, that increases your input costs. You have less ranches. Because you have less and less ranches, and people are not going into the business. That's why your prices are high. You have a very big disconnect. In Colorado last year, there was around 700,000 head. This year, it's 590,000 as of January.
So what's it like being a rancher in Colorado in these anti-meat days? We're going to find out, but first subscribe and like our channel. Click that little bell icon for notifications and find the Devil's Advocate podcast on your favorite listening app. So Dr. Chuck Duray, so how long have you been a vegetarian?
Well, I haven't been a vegetarian very long. I'll try every Friday day as I'm Catholic. That's about it. It's about as far as I'm going to
Really?
get.
So you're a rancher who doesn't eat meat on Fridays?
That's right. Only in during Lent. And when the wife doesn't allow me to sneak it in. So that's really good.
Come over to my place, will you? We can do it. All right, I'm just really curious. I've heard it's getting tougher and tougher to be a rancher in Colorado. Growing up here, that was who people were. They were ranchers, they were oilmen, they were farmers. There was this real connection between the suburbs and the rural areas. There was a respect that happened. I don't see that right now. Let's start off with, it's been a few years, Meat Out Day, when our governor said, you ought to not have meat. Look at the disgust in your eyes with that one.
I can't even stand it. I just
Why?
Meatless. I get the World War I where we were at Meatless Mondays. That's where it came from.
I don't remember that before my time.
Well, history teacher, so I had that thing going for me. But so I understood that meat is an essential protein. The fat are essential. You can get rid of carbs all day long. So all of a sudden you want to take a day out when you're not supposed to be healthy. And I get it, but if people want to be vegans, they can do that all day long. But I'm a meat eater, and so are many of my friends that I know and our customers.
Were you shocked by the reaction to Meat Out Day that the governor did? And you guys sold more meat that day. It was kind of like when they go after guns and gun sales go crazy. People were offended by that. The governor said, "Oh, you look at how much meat I've been selling by doing this stunt." It's like, no. My sense is his husband, who is a religious vegetarian activist, pushes him in these areas. Were you surprised by how big that reaction against it was?
I wasn't.
Really? Why?
And as soon as it came out, the cell phone blew up. And that told me everything I needed to know. Even friends that are Democrats, my wife and I were teachers too. So we have a lot of friends who are Democrats, and even they were going, this is crazy. Why are we not allowed to eat meat? Who's trying to push this on us? Free Colorado, right? It's still there. It's still there out in many areas. And it was unbelievable, the response. And we ran out of beef. We literally ran out of beef for a year and a half because we're a small farm to table. So the orders came in, and we were 2 years out. There were barbecues everywhere. The Colorado Cattlemen's Association gained membership. I mean, things that you did not know about your own group of people, the next group of people, and people got more involved. The need for butchers rose. I mean, astronomically. It still is. It's like a skill trade.
So really, was it a good thing that the governor did Meat Out Day? It seems like it sold out your inventory.
It wasn't meant that way for them. The idea was that they were going to really ruin the industry by a day, which, if you think about it, if you just attach numbers to your fiscal responsibility, you're taking one day out. And the opposite effect happened because Colorado does not put up with a lot of government.
But there has been a lot of government, particularly in your area. Tell me what's going on right now, or in the last few years, that as a small rancher, you felt. What are the regulatory changes or the legal changes? Is it getting more difficult to run your business?
Well, certainly for us it has, and it starts with four things. There's four things you need: people, land, cattle, all right, and of course water. And Once you have more growth and you have regulations attached to that growth, you get more problems with working the land. And right now in our area, and this isn't me saying it, this is the Bureau, the Farm Bureau, as well as the Chamber of Commerce. We are the number 7 out of 10 most regulated areas. And so on my ranch, I'm always pulling open good ideas. If you have a good idea, I'm willing to accept it. But if it's a government idea that says DEI, like you see it inserted in there, it's been going, this has nothing to do with what I'm doing. I really don't care about.
You need to have black steer and white steer living together in harmony.
You can, if you want to try naming or dealing with a bull and treating it like a cow, you be my guest. I'll call the ambulance. Just make sure you have insurance.
So try to be specific for me. You're a rancher. What specific regulation has made life harder for you in the last few years?
Well, one of the things that's made it hard is this concept that that vegetative fuels. Cattle eat dead plants. If you want to mitigate fires, cattle do it. Right now, we have more and more regulations that say this is how your grass has to be cut. This is the kind of grass you have to have. This is the invasive plant. There's, for example, nut-tail sunflower is considered invasive. Nut-tail sunflower has a lot of protein in it. Cattle can take that up and prevent it from growing. So cattle are much better than mowing or trying to kill it with pesticides.
So let me see if I'm understanding you, because I might not be. When you say they eat dead plants, do you mean when they're grazing on a field, they will pick up the dead pieces of vegetation, or will they strip the whole place clean?
They'll strip it clean. They'll first go after the sweetest, like Coke. The most sugar in a plant is what the cattle are going to eat first. Then they make another turn. Then they make another turn. Then they make another turn. Always constantly eating it down to the point where whatever's left, they will snag up. And you could come to my ranch and you could see at the headquarters, the main spot, where they've done that. We've got the heifers on there, and now we feed them winter hay. So they're extraordinarily effective. The good news is this: local fire, local police, even the county local extension services are very good. They understand what regulations should be imposed in the county area. The fear is, though, as you establish more of a climate of sort of what I would call a sort of the old school progressive, where we're going to give you more rules, and that's how we're going to make society better. The more of that happens, the more people tend to recoil from wanting to expand job opportunities. So it's not just the regulation that's going on, it's the climate that is being set by governance.
And as a rancher, have you noticed a change in that climate since Polis has been in office?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just me. I mean, take a look at the numbers. We're now, and I got it, we had some drought, but we're now at 1950, the national herd's at 1951 levels. And
say that again, because I don't think I'm following.
Sure.
So the herd, would you just say Colorado's herd or the nation's herd or what?
Right. The nation's herd and Colorado, take a look at these numbers. So the herd that we have right now, the size, the head of cattle, it gets estimated by USDA every year and is pushed out. Right now, we are at 1951 levels in 2024. In 2025, 31 January, they just published it, we're at 1950 levels. And think of the population that's grown at this time, John. I mean, it's just, I tell you, sir, it's
Is that just a matter of taste, that people aren't buying your product and you're blaming government because people don't like meat as much as they used to?
We now have about 100,000 less ranches. And we have people not coming into the business because the input costs, the cost to start this. I'm one of the rare guys that come in after Army career and teaching and all this other business.
You were in the Army, you had a teaching career, you got your doctorate.
I'm one of the rare guys coming in.
And you said, I want to be a cowboy, I want to raise cows.
Yeah, that's right.
And you've been working on this for 15 years. How many cattle do you have? Is it called head of cattle?
Head of cattle. Right now, we sold out everything between myself and Dave Reynolds, great cattleman, great stockman that I learned from. I learned from Dave. And what we did is we split the herd and we pretty much sold everything last year. So what we're doing right now is we split the herd, and the ones that I have, we're working with a genetics, it's all about genetics, and we're actually using bulls that are smaller because people can afford less. Inflation has killed them. Talk about regulations.
Say wolves that are smaller or cows?
No,
Cows.
the bulls.
Bulls,
The
okay.
bulls are smaller. The heifers we've retained the same size, and so the reason for that is that when a cow gives birth, that the calf is an easy birth, which means it's easier on the cow. And also when we raise them, they're stocky, but they're not stocky Angus. We use Angus cross, which means we can use different breeds that we bring in as long as they're healthy. That's the most important part. And it's an economics decision. It's economic stewardship that we're using.
How long does it take from birth to harvest?
It typically is when you start feeding them their final fats and grass, you're looking at about 24 months. You're doing 24 months. It's about a 2-year gig.
All right, so it's not like chickens. Right now we've got a big problem with chickens and eggs, but in 3-4 months they'll be replenished if the demand is the right way. You've got to make projections on what people are going to be buying 2 years from now, and you've got to make your decisions today based on that.
That's the tricky business. That's why it's so hard to get in. And if you don't have, and the Cattlemen's Association will tell you this, the loss of multi-generational ranches, these big ranches, has really been the number one concern. And the climate of the high input costs is partly causing that. It's almost related to inflation, but it's also related to how much can you afford on the land? How much can you afford? Do you have enough water? Water is a big issue out here, to the point that there are watersheds that need to be protected. There are some environmental regulations that need to be done. And I can give you Fountain Creek. Have you ever heard of Fountain Creek? Well, you got to bring Jay Frost out here. He's been a multi-generational rancher, Maggie Hanna. They can tell you all the issues of, particularly from Air Force dumping of chemicals, from fire retardant, heard all that. That and the storm drain sewer system in Colorado Springs, because of growth that never kept up properly. And so that's gone down into the Arkansas River Basin, has caused enormous problems in terms of water quality. So those are things that happen, but as a result, it's these little ticks that keep driving up the costs. And the more government gets put into that, the more those costs get up.
So with 50 head of cattle, I'm imagining you're a pretty small rancher compared to the mass feedlots and the big chains. So it's a tricky small business. How many of you are there in Colorado?
There's just a small farm to table.
Yeah.
Boy, I tell you, I don't know the answer to that, but I do know it's in the hundred, at least in the hundreds, and it provides. I can give you a statistic that 80% of all ranches are kind of like farm to table, and that there's always one person working. My wife still teaches. She took over. We did sort of a 1-for-1 swap. We created the skilled trade school, helped out with that, with the James Irwin system. And I brought her in because she was a great science teacher. So she's doing metallurgy, and she'll help me out with the horses, and she'll help me out with the cattle.
Simple question. Why is the price of my steak so high?
It's demand. It's supply and demand. You can't. It's free market economics.
So it's not government interference. It's not rules and regs coming from the state. It's just demand.
Well, remember this: if you have high input costs and more regulations, that increases your input costs. You have less ranches. Because you have less and less ranches, and people are not going into the business. That's why your prices are high. You have a very big disconnect. In Colorado last year, there was around 700,000 head. This year, it's 590,000 as of January.
Wait a minute, from 700 to 500 roughly?
590,000. And that's a big chunk. Most of that was folks like myself selling everything we can because the demand was high. But that demand has not gone down. More people are coming into Colorado. We've had an increase of people.
Let's talk a little bit about this legislative session. Is there something on the table now that you guys are worried about?
Oh, sure.
Go ahead.
Oh,
What
sure.
is it?
There's like 5 of them. The worst one is the most dangerous one, and even most ranchers may not even see it this way. It's called the best scientific practices legislation. In other words, they're going to base their legislation off the best science available.
And the ranchers who live in downtown Denver are going to decide that?
That's right. If you just a little history lesson. Let's go back to the 90s when the best science was taught that cow farts produce methane and cause global warming.
Right.
We now know that to be completely false. We know that, and the literature, CSU just finished another study in 2024. Cattle are carbon uptakers. In other words, when they eat and they poop, they actually retain the carbon and then restore the soil. You eat the meat. They get rid of the plants. They mitigate fires. They are carbon uptakers. They don't know the number. They're 4 times better than what, in terms of like, if you believe in that carbon
Right.
methodology. But back in the day, methane was supposed to last 1,000 years. We now know it only lasts 10 years in the atmosphere. Yes, you go by a feedlot, boys, it smell. Sure. That's the extent of it. And so that 90s best science, had they done that, that would have driven the cattle business out, and we'd be eating, I don't know, maybe.
Which is what they're trying to do. Right. If you talk to folks like the governor's husband, he will give you
I'm not
all
going to
sorts
talk
of
to the
reasons.
governor's husband. I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen anytime soon.
But the idea is to make it more and more difficult to own pets, to own cattle, to own animals, and to process them. Work on the veterinarian board to make it harder for what you guys do. Putting anti-meat activists on the veterinary board, which oversee your product. It's not like these are people who grew up in your industry, who are experts in this industry. You know, when I hear the elite down in the Capitol talk about following the science, well, wait a second, whose science? And my sense is cattlemen probably know what's best for cattlemen and their herds.
I've learned more from stockmen in our area. Our veteran complains about that too. I could bring Mel on. She could probably fulfill 2 hours on all that issue that you're talking about. But I have known, and I've seen a better environmental understanding, because if you don't treat your soil right, matter of fact, most ranchers will say they're grass farmers. If you don't treat that soil right and you don't have good grass, you're going to go out of business. You're just not going to make it.
How much land do you have that you raise these guys on?
We just bought another 20 acres. We are now at just under 400 acres.
And is that
plots.
how much you need for?
For our size, yes. We can do
so
that.
that's a lot of land for 50 cows or steer.
It sounds like it, but in our area, in that soil and also our climate, especially El Paso County, is very dry. And it's that high elevated, high plains climate, high wind, so you don't get a lot of moisture. So the plants that are out there, you have to be real careful. You have to rotate them constantly.
There's a sense that you people don't really like the environment. Thank God we've got smarter people in the city who understand how your land should be treated. Your land will be better off when we introduce wolves into it. Your land will be better off when we do this, when we limit and make it harder for you to produce the cattle and steer that we all eat. We know it's better to close down meat packing facilities, as a Denver vote was about. Why don't you care about the environment? Why do you want to trash your own land?
You're so right, John. You know, I really should. Let's shut down the Hispanic lamb and sheep plant.
Yeah.
Let's shut that down, even though they're humanely slaughtering that and properly processing that Hispanic-owned business. Let's shut that down. And let's introduce gray wolves who are absolutely cruel and actually eat their prey while they're still alive. I've watched gray wolves eat when I was in the Army doing AMB PVS-4 on an operation. What do we have over there? Those are gray wolves, and we watch them from a distance. It's not a pretty sight, even through old, night vision devices. It's pretty ugly. So on the one hand, yes, yeah, I hear these smart people, which I've run into in education, say, "Oh yeah, let's go ahead and stop the humane slaughter of lamb and sheep, and let's introduce a cruel apex predator that just devours and overkills. They don't trophy kill, but they overkill, and they do it because they need 9 pounds of beef a day. That's a lethal, cruel apex predator." And it's amazing how those folks actually believe they're doing the right thing. I guess if you want to reduce the human population, that might be your goal. I don't know what your goal is. I really have no idea.
What I'm trying to get at is this misconception that farmers and ranchers have no sense of conservation or no sense of caretaking for the property on which their livelihood depends. That you're not going to build a ranch that destroys the ability for your cattle to graze. Matter of fact, you've got to figure out how to do it in a sustainable way. No one's going to know how to do this better than you.
When I first started this, I went through all the NRCS regulations, National Council and Conservation regulations. And it was very obvious that every single regulation and every class that I've gone to, it is stewardship first, cattle next. And including that Fountain Creek watershed, that was all ranchers putting that together and sounding the alarm. This watershed, if we want clean water, and to make this work, and we got to reduce the subdivisions. You got to address the sewer system. We got to address the fire retardant that unfortunately Department of Defense dumped in
You are
there.
sounding like such a progressive.
I know.
Oh, water quality,
my
water
gosh.
quality.
Air quality. I mean, fire mitigation. We want clean air.
So
that's what cattle do.
the point being, you have a vested interest to make sure that the land is treated properly. All right, let's get to what you want. What is it that those city slickers and we suburbanites don't understand about your industry that we really need to?
What we want them to understand, and from a small rancher perspective, is that you have options out there that's not the grocery store. And if you're going to ask me right now, is beef healthier? My beef is. And what I've learned from
Healthier than what?
than what you're getting at the grocery store, because it's farm to table. And
What does that mean? Help me out, farm to table.
Sure, farm to table means that we monitor those cattle every day, as opposed to a cattle going to a feedlot, which is good, by the way. They do a good job. I don't use any hormones, any steroids, none of that business. There's none of that goes in. We've noticed this on our customers. We've got doctors and surgeons now buying our beef. We have people who are their patients who could not eat what's in the store because of the preservatives that are put in there. For example, someone was talking about the hog, and someone's child could not take the hog because of the nitrates in the bacon, so they couldn't eat it. Well, if you butcher a hog or a cattle that's local, it is much more healthier, and people can actually eat the meat. We've heard stories about people who could never eat meat before, then they started to buy our beef. And this started with Dave Reynolds. He's got a number of customers who are like that I learned, the stockman I learned from. And we don't know why. We suspect it's less hormones, less steroids. There's nothing wrong with that. But it kind of has, for about 10 years, this thing that's come up, this Maha business with RFK Jr., the Make America Healthy Again business. We noticed that about 10 years ago about farm to table. Things that don't have pesticides, that don't have some of the, and again, I'm not criticizing.
This is the difference between going down to your farmer's market and going down to the Walmart supercenter.
There is a big difference for some people. For a lot of people, it's fine. Our beef is going to be somewhere around prime and choice. That means when you take that beef, that steak, and you put it on that grill, and it's just sizzling away. It has that marble, that
Right.
amount of fats, that biblical fats.
Biblical fats.
I call it biblical fats because that's how God said things were great. If you read the Bible and you look at how he looked at meat, and you eat that, and it's just tender and delicious. You can't do that with a lot of meat that you buy at the store because they're trying to feed America So it's gone from prime and choice, which is our area, to more choice, select, and in fact, some people can't afford to even buy that, and because inflation is so high, now they're going into the canner, the beef stews, the stuff where you can only just cook it and break it up in your crock pot.
All right, so give me those levels again. If I want the best healthy quality meat, it's called
Prime.
prime. Below that is
Choice, then select, and then the two below that are cutter canner, and then commercial.
okay,
That would be like your dog food and all your, but this cutter canner's like your Dinty Moore beef stew.
right.
It's kind of rubbery chew. You get it. You're hungry.
You're
it's
hungry.
cheap.
It's meat. It's protein.
It's
you want
there,
it. Yeah.
but it doesn't have that quality. Prime, and the way it's rated is the amount of fat, not the amount. So when someone says lean beef, know that isn't necessarily the best beef. The best beef is the one that has a high amount of fat. We shoot for about 70-30 because fats are, I know, you and I, remember the best science that we learned, the food pyramid?
Right.
And
Which was complete crap.
it was a disaster. They took the sugar and then replaced the fat,
Right.
and then we all got addicted to sugar.
Because government knows what's best for our bodies. So people our age were raised with this ridiculous pyramid, and we should be eating pasta and toast like 24/7.
Right.
And that was,
And we cooked everything in vegetable oil. I remember my mom. You don't. She just said she would cook things in fat if she could get a hold of it. Vegetable oil was synthetic oil.
Right.
When we were in Iraq, we used to put vegetable oil in case we ran out of oil and your Humvee was shot. You could actually put the vegetable oil and let it run to get to where you need to go if you had a field kitchen. So vegetable oil is always synthetic, and olive oil and fats are critical to our health. And so that's prime. Prime is that nice marble fat that you get, and you can tell by sizzling how it sizzles on the grill.
let's bring it back to the state regulators. What are you most concerned about them doing to endanger your operation, farm to table, healthy meat? What is it? What's the threat? Because I feel it, I sense it. You've got to feel it too. There's people who want to put you out of business. What are you worried that they're going to do?
I'll tell you the number one thing that I'm worried about, besides these best science laws
Right.
that are complete disasters throughout history, the next one is the gray wolves. This is a major problem that is going to move into the Front Range and into the Eastern Plains. And the reason for that is simple. The gray wolves, for those of us who actually study science, gray wolves eat cattle, then they eat deer, both the mule and the whitetail, and they eat elk. And the last one that they find an affinity for at the Department of Texas is known as pronghorn antelope. Well, guess where all those are at? On the Eastern Plains. So once those gray wolves have moved off, and they're already moved, there's already gray wolf report in Teller County.
In Teller County.
Right.
Wow.
They've already, matter of fact, the CPW, and there's some good people in Colorado Parks and Wildlife. They do a good job. The problem is this gray wolf introduction has divided people upon what they have to do, their mission they have to do, and the ranchers who want to save their livelihoods. Divided people for no reason. Well, those gray wolves are going to move, just like they moved in Idaho and overexpanded. There's no fence that says gray wolves stop, turn around, please go. They're going to cross the Front Range. They're going to get into Eastern Plains where the high concentrations of white-tailed deer and more cattle are located, and they're going to move with the migration corridors. Research has borne that out.
And what angers me so much about the wolf introduction is it's a bunch of yuppies in Boulder and Denver who have no connection to farming and ranching, making decisions for farmers and ranchers. It's the same problem I've got with gun control laws. People who know nothing about guns are the ones going to regulate gun ownership. It's insane. All right, so follow the science laws where somebody else gets to decide what the science is, not you. Gray wolf, what else is concerning you from a political point of view?
Inflation. We have to rein in spending. And that's for all of us. Everything is high. And as I used to teach the students, there's three types of inflation: cost push, demand pull, and wage labor. Cost push is the worst because when our tax gets raised, a new fee gets introduced, that is pushed on all of us. I have 3 trailers. the cost of those fees of registering the trailers increase. I have one beat up truck that I use. My wife has I got the wife the new Ford Maverick. I'm not making a thing for Ford. Okay, I buy Ford. I'm just saying I got her that. And she loves it. It has too many gizmos on it.
But the problem is, if you're a rancher or a farmer, you have lots of what are called vehicles. Even if it's just a trailer that gets pulled, you need it. And now with the so-called faster fee and other fees, the one guy who has one car in his garage in Highlands Ranch, that's fine. But you've got several, and other farmers have several.
2 tractors in addition to, which uses diesel fuel. And the Type 2 and diesel is fantastic. And people are talking, oh, we're going to use tractors with batteries. Okay, well, after 7 years, what do I do next? When the batteries run out. I actually have a son in wind turbines, for example. No, don't call them windmills. You got to call them wind turbines. There's a big difference, right? One's kinetic energy. That translates to mechanical energy. That's a windmill. And the other one translates from kinetic to mechanical to electrical. And that's why it doesn't work. You have to redesign them. I had students actually redesign. We were working on some of those ideas. At some point, it's going to work. But right now, when you subsidize those things, you're taking money away and you're cheapening our money. And that drives, once again, input costs higher because cost push inflation is pushed on us.
Very last topic. There's a push for what you will call fake meat, which I'll call grown meat. That chemically, it is still the same as meat, but it's lab-created meat.
Is it?
And that's why a lot of people who are animal activists go, look, we can all live together. We will grow this meat in labs. That way we don't have to hurt the cattle. And it's going to be good, quality, delicious meat. And I've had the Impossible Burger or whatever. I've had a couple of those. They've been okay. I haven't thrown them against the wall in disgust. But talk to a rancher, and they treat it like an existential threat. Is it?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be a disaster. And once again, it should never be subsidized because it tastes awful. I mean, it is just not meat. It doesn't have the right amount of fats. It doesn't have that. It's going to. We've tried it. I'm more than willing, John, to if there's something that makes sense, I'm more than willing to do it. It's got to make sense though. So one night, one of our kids came home and says, "Hey, I'm gonna cook that Impossible beef, and we're gonna get all that together." And so we tried it, and it tasted like cardboard. And I look on the back, and I'm trying to figure out what's in it. John, I don't know what's in it. And then so I did a little more research, and people are saying, "Oh, it's got a bunch of unidentified proteins in it." Unidentified proteins. Wait a minute. So this is going through my mind. Now, we hated it. We spit it out, and our 2 dogs came up to us, and they're like, "Oh, what do you have?" You know how they do it at the dinner table. We said, "Oh, we'll give you some of the scraps." So we gave it to them, and the dogs went, and they went, "Nope," and they went away. Our dogs never do that. If we could give them salad, they'll be all right, as long as you got a little bit of meat in it.
So you're telling me you think taste alone is going to doom these processed, fake, lab-grown meats?
I think right now, as it is, what I sampled last year, absolutely, 100%. It doesn't taste like anything.
As long as there's no government money going to it, I don't care. Go ahead and try it. Have your Beyond Burgers. Great. People might love it. Great. I just don't want it subsidized. And I don't want you subsidized either. And a lot of people would say, no, you ranchers are subsidized because you get to graze on public land at a very cheap price, and that's your subsidy.
Well, I tell you, if you want to feed the nation, you want to be healthy, if you want that to happen, you have, in Colorado, you have, we don't do state land, first of all, but I know some folks who ranch, big time ranchers, and they win like conservation awards. These guys are superstars. Let's talk about that land just for a moment. You have somewhere around, I think it's a few million acres here in Colorado. That's state land, not federal, but state.
Right.
Okay. 98% of that is rented by cattlemen. Okay. Good to go so far. And because that's what we can produce. Now, that money goes to what's called the State Land Board. One of the best programs in Colorado. limited government program. I'm a limited government guy, but it's one of the best programs. That all those fees that they get, that goes to schools for capital construction projects in Denver, Larimer County, Jefferson, Broomfield, Douglas, El Paso, Pueblo, all these schools that can't raise tax money, the ranchers pay for.
So in other words, the rural folks get to pay to build schools in the rich guy's neighborhood.
That's right, and it's called the BEST program and the charter school program, which charter schools are public schools.
When you say BEST, I'm assuring that's an acronym for something. You're
Acronym
not
for
calling
something
it a
I can't-
great, right?
But it is right now. I looked at it, and it's somewhere over $2.1 billion have from ranchers, who are the big chunk of that, have gone to build schools or restore schools or rebuild roofs that have been damaged or walls that are falling apart or plumbing. And then schools also get monthly stipends. The school that I was working at, Liberty Tree, a Hillsdale affiliate, they were getting BEST money per month. The charter skilled trade school that Colorado is very invested in, because we don't have enough, just like we don't have enough ranchers, we don't have enough skilled tradesmen.
Right.
That is getting a tremendous amount of money to get that program started. If you take ranchers out of the state lands, who are great environmental stewards, you take them out of the state lands, or you introduce a predator that impacts that, you're only harming the schools in the urban and suburban areas.
Very last question, real fast. If Colorado were to pass one law or one policy change that ranchers throughout the state would applaud, what would it be?
I think the best one would be just what you brought up, the meat. There needs to be a prohibition on that meat until we figure out that the laboratory meat, until we figure out what's in it.
You want a prohibition on it? I have a hard time saying I would want a prohibition. People want to experiment with mystery meat. I'm okay with it. It's their bodies. I just don't want to pay for it.
Well, the problem is, if there's health consequences, we all pay for the health consequences.
Now who's sounding like a progressive?
There you go. We all pay for that. So do we really want to put that into people's bodies? Should we test it? Why don't we find out what's going on before we start introducing something that we have no idea what's in it?
I had a heart attack about a half a year ago. I'm pretty sure it was your red meat that did it. And there will be a class action lawsuit.
Wasn't the sugar, right?
No, it wasn't the 15. It wasn't the 15 Cokes I had a day.
It had to be the wonderful fat.
It was definitely the meat. I could tell.
Well, we food pyramids are taught that, aren't we? We were indoctrinated. It's all the fat's fault. Yeah.
Hey, if people want to get more information on ranching way of life, cattlemen, is there a good website to go to or a good organization to check out?
If you're interested in becoming a rancher, Colorado Cattlemen's Association is a good one. They have a lot of best practices out there. And then your local associations, for example, Pikes Peak Cattlemen's Association, you find them through the Cattlemen's Association, the Colorado one, and you look them up. If you're interested in getting to ranching, if you're interested in getting to that, go see somebody who's ranching. That's the best way. That's how I learned. That's how I ask questions. And if you're looking for land and water, your county extensions, start there first.
Good to know. Chuck, thank you so much.
Hey, you're welcome.
Next time, bring a couple steaks, will you?
You got it.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.